Hello, I'm Fanny Seroglu from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and I'll try to present you some ideas concerning teacher training in GSTEAM using the Gnosis model. Here we have first to recognize the problem. Teachers' actions, attitudes, teaching styles reproduce gender stereotypes. Teachers' attitudes concerning gender in science education aren't but an outprint of society's values and expectations. There is a need for teacher training today in order to overcome gender bias, to stop reproducing gender stereotypes, and to encourage boys' and girls' participation in science learning. For 30 years now and more, women-friendly science teaching has been encouraged. Many women study and work in science, but still we haven't come to the results we want in women participation in work and study in STEM disciplines. Still in 2007, looking at research in Cordis concerning the 7th framework program, they tried to see how many were the researchers and what was the profile of a researcher at that point. And unfortunately, among 9,000 researchers, the main profile was male researcher, age 36. We need also to create web-based learning environments for teacher education. And the technology needs to help us to demystify science, to play a significant role as a medium in learning interactions, and to bring together educational improvement and innovation, in our case, in gender-inclusive STEM education. We want to welcome pre- and in-service teachers to put forward their ideas, to build their self-esteem, their appreciation of their efficacy in science teaching, to become more active and independent as teachers, to get familiar to collecting and using instructional material, either e-material or 3D material, and be introduced to instructional material design, always in the perspective of gender in science and STEM education. Here we propose that we could use the Gnosis model in this gender-inclusive STEM education. We could use this model to design and evaluate activities for teacher training for a STEM education for all, boys and girls, and to try in this context to overcome gender stereotypes, to reshape the image of scientists, so male scientists and women scientists also become visible in the world of science and in the world of education. And also this way we will be able to alter the image of science as well. This is an overview of the Gnosis model. The Gnosis model has three teaching and learning dimensions: the cognitive dimension, the metacognitive, and the emotional. And these three dimensions are very much supported by three meta-sciences: the history of science, the philosophy of science, and the sociology of science. In the cognitive dimension, we discuss about the nature of science contents and the nature of science contexts. In the metacognitive dimension, we discuss about the synthetic nature of science as a product, the nature of the evolution and methodologies of science, the nature of the interrelations of science and society. In the third dimension, the emotional, we discuss about the nature of attitudes expressed through science and the nature of values fostered by science. If we try to see closely how gnosis could be used in the gender-inclusive STEM education, in the cognitive dimension, for example, in the nature of science context, we could focus on concepts and theories concerning the work of women scientists. In the nature of science context, we could discuss about historical, social, cultural contexts of the life and work of women scientists. If we take a look at the metacognitive dimension concerning the synthetic nature of science as a product, there are many cases where we can discuss interesting ideas like the differences between discovery and invention or the contribution of women scientists in theory development. In the nature of the evolution and methodologies of science, we could see how the evolution of scientific reasoning goes on and how women scientists contribute both in scientific reasoning and in methodology development. In the nature of the interrelations of science and society, there are many cases where we can discuss women and the role of women scientists in science and society, and the societal and cultural obstacles in women scientists' careers. In the emotional dimension now, we have the nature of attitudes expressed through science, like attitudes and stereotypes concerning women in STEM, encouraging non-gender biased attitudes, and in the case of nature of values fostered by science, we could have a clear focus on the values of equality for all genders in studies and work in the STEM fields. Let's see an example. For example, we can use a case study that we have developed both in Thessaloniki and with colleagues in Buenos Aires, that we call it Tell Me Your Story of Madame Curie. There we have used sets of activities, we focused on teacher training, we used various kinds of narratives like a legend or a short documentary or a film. And what we presented is that each one of us can tell the story of Madame Curie as a figure, a fictional figure as it has been presented, and also at the same time present the nature of science, some key ideas concerning the nature of science. This is one of the films that we used, and this Marie Curie's Radium is one of the documentaries that we used in this context. As we worked with teachers, with them role-playing, inspired by the film and the documentary, they created their own role plays and performed the main heroes of the story and told us their story of Maria Curie. But the main initiative is to rediscover Maria Sklodowska, because this was the name of Maria Curie before getting married to Pierre Curie, and to bring forward the fact that she was not French, she was an immigrant, she came from Poland, that she studied science in Paris because she couldn't study science in the Polish universities. She works hard and successfully. She gets 2 Nobel Prizes. One of those is with her husband, the other after his death. However, when she gets her first prize with her husband, the research is actually her doctorate, her thesis her PhD thesis that she's doing with Becquerel, her professor. Yes, Pierre is helping, but actually they share a Nobel, although she is the main person, the key person of this research. And later on, when Pierre dies in an accident, she keeps on working and she is nominated a second Nobel, but at this point it was very difficult for the society, the European society, to accept a woman getting a Nobel without the presence of a man. So they put forward rumors about her involvement, her sentimental involvement with Paul Langevin, and that she shouldn't actually get the second Nobel Prize. Maria Sklodowska-Curie moves on beyond the rumors and all these tactics of the European society of those days, and she actually goes to the ceremony. She receives the Nobel Prize, the second Nobel Prize, and says that her work has nothing to do with her private life. She is the first woman professor in Sorbonne, and Maria Curie is the first woman who is a non-French person. She's a Polish immigrant in France that actually in 1996 or 95, President Mitterrand, with his own hands, puts the bones of Maria Curie in the French Pantheon. There are many new first-time things that she does, and she's an interesting figure, but also presenting her this way, we demystify, let's say, the persona of Marie Curie as it has been presented, and we actually find out the real person, this real woman with real problems and bias that unfortunately has had faced in her career. So this is the problem, how to tell the story of Maria Sklodowska without reproducing the story of the figure of Madame Curie. Here, if we try to see step by step the Gnosis model, we see that in the cognitive dimension, we discuss about radium, the structure of the atom, the radioactivity, scientific interpretations, theory and models. And also we see the historical and social context around the life and work of Maria Sklodowska-Curie. In the metacognitive dimension, we see in this case the difference between discovery and invention. We follow the scientific reasoning of Maria Sklodowska-Curie, and of course there are many to discuss about science-society interrelations. In the emotional dimension, the teachers that go through this kind of seminar, they face their own attitudes and stereotypes, and also they face society's values and expectations about the role of women, and they have to reflect on that, discuss on that, and declare the changes that they would like to make in their teaching. So there are many interesting results as we have performed this kind of teaching to teachers, trying to push them towards a more gender inclusive teaching. We see the attitudes and the reactions of teachers, they come forward, what they believe about the social stereotypes. Also, their perceptions or self-esteem and self-efficacy in science teaching for all, boys and girls, also come forward. And also, we have a shift in attitudes, in reactions, and in the levels of self-esteem and self-efficacy. And here again, we need to focus on the type of ICT facilities that the teachers actually use during any training, because usually a part of our training nowadays is always remote or mobile training. And how they gain, what they gain through this process, what quality and quantity of social interaction is activated if we work by distance. Now, something else that we have used a lot is to create digital narratives about women in science, and to use slow animation, that's why we call it slowmation, in the case of this theme. Science has been taught for far too long as a positivistic interpretation of the world, and that has never been attractive, far more today in the era of video and YouTube. We need new creative learning environments that activate a variety of forms of knowledge and experience and encourage scientific literacy. We have come to using digital narratives and especially slowmations because they offer us a pleasant environment, offer to the people who are trained, either teachers or later on students in their own classrooms, freedom and a context that is multimodal and interdisciplinary. We need this pleasant, multimodal, interdisciplinary environment and this freedom in learning, because this allows deep learning. Activating this variety of form of knowledge and experience put together as in the classroom, as in real life, forms of knowledge and experience are integrated. And we need to encourage scientific literacy and inclusion. Slowmation has 6 steps. First, we decide about the final output, the story that is going to be told about science or women in science, and it is decided by the creators themselves. If teachers are going to create this story, they will decide about it. If it is students in the schools, the students will decide about it. Then they develop a scenario, the story, where ideas from science, from perhaps history of science, if they concern women scientists, are put together in a very, let's say, clever, if possible, funny story and intriguing story that has many plot twists. And then they also create, the teachers, for example, if it is a teacher training course, they make the props, they construct a mini studio, they make the heroes in 3D approaches. Then, when everything is ready, they take photographs, and in their photographs, let's say, we have moment after moment, their story, their scenario in the props and their mini studio moving on. So every photograph is like a special moment of their story. So after they take all these photographs, and in the case of slowmation, we need 2 pictures every second. This means to create a story of 1 minute, they need at least 60 photographs. If they want to make a story that takes 2 minutes, then they are going to need 120 photographs. They develop, they perform, they record dialogues. The dialogues are in the scenario, and they perform them themselves, the creators of this short slowmation movie. And then in the end, they edit image and sound in their slowmation movie using some platform for video editing. Here are some photographs with children using this kind of technique. You can see what they used: papers and crayons and scissors, and of course there you see an empty box the way it's cut, and this is the mini studio where gradually, as you see, they created their props and their scenery, and then their heroes, and they took the photographs using their smartphones. For example, here we have this beautiful stage that is created. It is the balcony where Romeo meets Juliet, but in this case Romeo is an acid and Juliet is a base, so acids and base, they cannot meet. It's forbidden in chemistry as well. So you see here how a chemistry problem was turned into a beautiful story inspired by Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Here is an image of a platform that we have used. It is Movie Maker by Microsoft to put together the images that we have taken, as well as the sounds. Also, we can use iMovies if you are using a Mac computer, or UCAT or CapCut for smartphones. And of course, you can see that in the end we share the films that are created in slow motion, and we make a small, let's say, a festival where all movies, all slow motions are presented. We discuss about the movies with their creators, and usually a prize is given. A slow motion Oscar for the best feature that every slow motion movie that is created carries. Also, many of our films are presented, these slow motion movies are presented on YouTube at our channel that is called Atlas Movies Channel. This way science makes sense, and science is attractive. It is put in the context of the overall image of contemporary culture, where videos play such a significant role. Children themselves or teachers themselves, they can create their own movies, and they transform at the same time the image of science on the web as they present their films on the YouTube channel. Women scientists could help us this way, if they are presented in slow motion movies, to transform the image of science, to appreciate more the content of STEM, to express aspects of the nature of science, and develop attitudes and values. With digital narratives, children appreciate science content, express aspects of the nature of science, and develop attitudes and values. If at the second stage, first the teacher is trained and then he or she uses this kind of technique in the schools. We have done this now for almost 13-14 years in schools in Greece, and it is extremely successful in the learning and teaching outcomes. They develop original educational materials, non-experts for non-experts. The teachers, or also the children in the primary school, for example, are not experts, so the way they create their slow animation movies, they present in their language and in the way that non-experts interact all this information about women scientists or about science concepts, science ideas. This change of culture is very important to learn to create our own and, if possible, digital material in teachers' language or in children's language as well. this is a challenge, of course, for science education. For many years, we have learned to use only experts' ideas and experts' products as educational material. Here we say no, it's not only the products that are important of the experts in science, in education, in ICT, but non-experts, it's important for them to present their ideas because they are more appreciated by the open public and by children or citizens or teachers. This can be a challenge for researchers and educators, but it is also a social demand towards science for all. A science that is understood by boys, by girls, by citizens, by everyone. Here, as we have used this technique for many years, and now we see that with digital narratives, teachers and children appreciate the science content, express aspects of the nature of science, and develop attitudes and values. Now, why do we have to change the way we usually teach? Now we learn, we try to teach science, and teachers or students as well, they try to learn science. And this is an information exchange activity in society. Our society has changed and changes every day in an accelerating rhythm and has to follow our teaching as well, the multimodality and the flexibility of communication that characterizes our lives today. If we have to understand that if science learning doesn't evolve and our teaching doesn't evolve and adapt, then it will gradually lose touch with its audience. And this is the case why we see globally a decrease in people choosing science careers. For example, another attempt that we have made in order to attract, with my group, the Atlas Research Group in Thessaloniki, in order to attract people, young people, to learn science, is that we have created a series of books for children that this way these books could be used either in the classroom and in science teaching and in formal curricula, or they can be used in parents' creative time with their children at home. This series of books, for example, they can have a place in children's free time as a leisure activity, at the theater as a performance for children and adults, or online for e-learning and mobile learning, with activities for the children. Every book has a narrative presented that is based on history of science, philosophy of science, science ethics, science education, and nature of science learning. That's how we have worked till now with my group. And in order to create this narrative, we had to go through loops of edutainment, controls, and adjustment. Edutainment is trying to meet education with entertainment. The development of a pleasant and intriguing story is never not scientific, neither scientific nor didactic. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And this is the first stage where we have to embody, elaborate topics from science with ideas in the scenario, in the story that we are creating. Also, we have to apply and evaluate science activities to measure if actually this let's say, story that we have created works with activities that are about science and follow. We also develop online science activities for e-learning and mobile learning. Then we have to make a very detailed editing of the narrative, how to use a language that actually speak children today, to see how children communicate or how people, citizens speak. We also could develop a theatrical play for children inspired by that story, and this play could be put on stage by a group of actors, and with the right director that knows how to work with children or with science as well. Then we need to evaluate and see what is the learning impact after reading the book, working on the activities, or attending a performance if it is a theater. In order to make this happen, we have to join forces. We have people from different fields of science or art or education to work together. For example, in order we in the Atlas group to make this creative team that shares this common idea of creating this story with science, and in our case what we want to do with women scientists in science and topics in STEM, we tried to put together and make this team with researchers in science education, in nature of science and history and philosophy of science, teachers that were also writers, the one who wrote the interesting stories and the narratives, a teacher who was also a publisher, so he was interested in creating this kind of books, teachers who are also researchers for the implementation, another teacher who was also an actor and producer for the play that went on stage, a specialized director, a young scholar in science and in literature to, let's say, make the language of the narrative to work with young children, and an illustrator that appreciates science and NOS, Nature of Science, and all these people, in the case of the books that we created, were women. So we had a strong, let's say, gender joint force. Here I will present you two narratives, one very brief and the other a bit more detailed. The first was a book for children about climate change that is called The Earth Has Fever, and the second was a book for children with a parable of Rosalind Franklin involvement to the DNA double helix research, and that book was is called The Stolen Ladder. What kind of activities can we involve with these books that were also made as e-books on the web? Drama in science education activities for the classroom, based on the stories on the book, that is dramatization, theatrical game, pantomime, role play, tableau vivant, improvisation, debate, and performance, of course, and artworks inspired by scientific concepts that were presented in the book, like drawings, collage, posters, cartoons, slow-motion videos, and crafts. As I told you, the book was also transformed into a play and performed by a professional theater group. Here is the book, as you see, the image of the book, and the poster for the play in theater. Here are some pictures of how this worked in the school. And this, the second book, is The Stolen Ladder. It is a book for children about Rosalind Franklin's involvement in the research about the DNA double helix, but it is written like a parable. So here there is a big, let's say, event who there is in the story. There is a natural history museum, and the people are asked to create a ladder to go from the first floor to the second floor. So this ladder is an analogy of the DNA, let's say, double helix, and there is Rosie, the analogy of Rosalind Franklin, who actually is an architect who designs this ladder, but her work is stolen by two men, like a photography, a crystallography photograph of Rosalind Franklin was stolen by Watson and Crick, and they used that in order to present their ideas about the double helix. So the story is at the same time presented in the book for children, and but we gradually get to know the real story of Rosalind Franklin and all the men scientists involved in this case, where finally the Nobel Prize was not given to Rosalind as she had already died, because the Nobel is not given to people who don't live, and it was given to others, to Watson and Crick, who had misused and mistreated herself as a scientist and misused her work and research. Here I try to present you a series of attempts of how we can work on gender in a way that is intriguing and fresh and, let's say, pleasant for teachers and students today. We try to present science concepts and theories, nature of science aspects, values and attitudes fostered by science contents and contexts of science, interrelations of science and society, and all those are, we try to recontextualize them in the slomations, in the role plays, in the e-books, the narratives that I finally presented. In these developed stories or in on-stage performances. We can do that in the classroom, online, outdoors, and if we try to teach like that, not only we put the gender theme topic strong in this kind of approaches, children not only they're going to be encouraged to participate in this gender inclusive STEM education, but they are going to be both educated and entertained in a style that is very close to the way they are entertained outside the school. When we use this kind of approaches, we have very encouraging results during the evaluations, when we go through evaluations in the case studies that we do. And but we also still carry demanding questions that I try here to summarize. How do we transform elements of science teaching and learning in the context of gender inclusive STEM education? This has to be a constant question in our mind as we move on. And could we, in this focus, create science teaching in a way that is creative science edutainment, education and entertainment at the same time? And this way, could we support science learning for all children and help them to learn science, boys and girls, and then pursue careers in science? you very much for your time.